All right, we're going to go ahead and get started with our last session of the day, which naturally is the last roadblock between all of us and the bar. Let me introduce our speaker, Eric Nath. He's a senior ASA in business valuation and has been valuing private companies for nearly 30 years. His focus is principally on fractional and partial interests in entities and undivided interests in real property. Projects include gift and sale transactions, estate and income tax matters, charitable contributions, stock option plans, recapitalizations, dispute resolution, litigation support, and dissolution bankruptcy proceedings. Eric served as on ASA's Business Valuation Committee in the early 1990s and has been actively contributing member for the Business Valuation Standards Committee since that time. From 2003 to 2009, Eric was the principal author and driving force for the adoption by ASA of Procedural Guideline 2, Valuing Partial Ownership Interests, which is now part of ASA's Business Valuation Standards. He also developed and taught ASA's graduate level courses, business valuation, discounts, and premiums. Eric is well known for his many articles and presentations on control premiums and minority interest valuation issues, such as his 1997 Business Valuation Review article, How Public Guideline Companies Represent Control Value for a Private Company. Today, he will take all of this past thoughts and ideas to their logical conclusion and demonstrate how you can forget everything you thought you knew about discounts. Please welcome to the podium, Eric Nath.
Thank you, Eric. What I want to do really today is not just talk about discounts and what you do with discounts. What I would like to talk about is the bigger issue of how to value non-controlling illiquid interests in private companies. This is one of the areas that has been sort of danced around in our profession, and we've talked about costs of capital and valuation of companies and how to value a company. Very little has been done in terms of really focusing on partial interest, fractional interests, non-controlling, illiquid interests, other than to talk about discounts. And what I would like to do is expand the conversation just a little bit. We really actually need a whole conference on this topic because it really is an enormous discussion. One of the things that I have found in the last few years is that there is a big disconnect between the taxonomy of valuing a company versus valuing the minority interests in that company. And so what you get when you mix these ideas up is you get cases like the Richmond case, which is so bad in so many ways. That is one of the reasons I wanted to do this presentation, is to talk about the specific things that go on in valuing minority interests versus controlling interests. I started business valuation in 1985. This was not too long after Shannon wrote his book on how to value a company. And I was with Bank of America in the trust department. We would value private interests for the trust group. I think we had something like around 1,400 minority interests and private companies in the trust group that needed to be valued. And one of the most difficult things that we faced at that time was figuring out what these things were really worth. And of course, at that time, there was precious little beyond valuing a company on how to manage this kind of process. And of course, we had data on restricted stock. We had data on the differential in value between the company before it went public and the company after it went public. So John Emery got busy and did these pre-IPO studies. We had, and at the time, of course, everybody was going through the business schools and going through CAPM and all that sort of thing. and looking at all this data from Roger Ibbotson and all this historical, interesting information from CRISP that was able, you could parse it and figure out what costs of capital were. We had the control premium studies. And so, you know, because public companies get taken over and there's a premium, so there was an analysis of the control premium studies to figure out what the value of control was, and by reciprocal of that was the value of a minority interest. But it was all this incomplete data, and we didn't understand what this data meant. We were extrapolating from data that we didn't understand, and we made some very wrong assumptions about what it meant. One of the things that we forgot to do when we looked at the control premium studies, when we looked at the pre-IPO studies and the restricted stock studies, was to ask why. Here's this data. It looks like something, but nobody ever thought to ask why. Why are there these discounts? What's driving these factors so that we just took the data and extrapolated it? What I wanted to do today was take a look at some of the conventional wisdom that we have in place at this point and talk about how the income approach could be a better solution for our problems in valuing private minority interest. And one of the things I would like to recommend to you is to take a look at ASA's Procedural Guideline 2. This is the only guidance that's in existence today that takes a comprehensive view of how to value private minority interests. What I want to focus on first is the conventional wisdom. The way this works is you value the company as a whole, either as a going concern or on its net asset value if it's an asset holding company. It doesn't really matter what's underneath it. We want to get the value of control. Subsequently, the theory goes you take discounts for lack of control, lack of marketability or liquidity, and perhaps some other discounts like a built-in capital gains tax. And from that, you then can derive a fair market value. Well, the problem with this is that nobody in the real world, meaning people who actually put money into deals, use this approach. The only people who use this approach are the appraisers and the courts. There's no actual investor who actually goes through this process. It doesn't work. Why am I confident that this does not work? For two reasons. First, because people don't use this approach in valuing private minority interests. And the second reason is you can take every one of those components and you can disprove it. So if none of the components actually work and nobody actually uses it, why do we think as appraisers that we can use this kind of an approach?